My question here is, with AI ready to augment human capabilities rather than simply replace jobs, what are the most promising examples of AI-human co-intelligence or collaboration in the workforce today?
So, Sudhir Menon, let me start with some fundamentals. Like when you look at AI or machine, right, what does it give us? Right? The ability to look at vast amount of data, identify patterns, right, and be able to do things on a large scale. Right? Whereas when you look at the human factor, the nuance understanding, the emotional intelligence, the creative problem solving, you got to mix the two, because one cannot replace the other or vice versa. But if you put those pieces together, look at what you can achieve in the field of training, in the field of HR, in the field of strategy, you take any. So you have to look at it as a collective unit and see on, okay, there are areas where AI knowledge, tools, and expertise are required. And the more people learn those tools, understand the value of that, and adapt to it, the better. People that do not follow that will fall behind, right? It's going to take some time to get there, but they're going to fall behind. So the earlier you understand and you enhance your skills to match them, the better for you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Seema Alexander, I mentioned earlier, I'm the co-founder of Virgent AI. We help accelerate AI adoption in mid-sized companies, as well as the co-chair here of DC Startup and Tech Week, so heavily involved in emerging technology. I mean, there's a couple things, and I was pulling up my phone because I just want to tell some stats. There was on the World Economic Forum job reports, 2025 job reports, it said 92 million jobs are going to be lost, 170 million are going to be gained. So that's a net of 78 million jobs that are going to be gained. And so in the work that we do at Virgin, we really focus on augmenting what we consider the superpower of humans. And we have a whole modern day business and what it's going to look like. But how many of you guys are familiar with AI agents? This is, to me, one of the biggest future virtual workforces, and that's going to become augmentation for humans if we do it properly in certain companies. So AI agents, compared to the internet, when the internet came out, we had apps, right? And tons of apps. AI agents now are going to become the virtual workforce. We're going to have millions of AI agents doing narrow tasks and collaborative tasks. So in the near future, you're going to have opportunities where we're implementing things on, say, the functional side for finance agents that are helping with analysis. And so the things that are heavily repetitive and heavily laborious in time can be automated or semi-automated into an AI agent, into an infrastructure of AI agents. And the way we're framing it to executives is you can use that to help your employees with productivity and efficiency and get them focused on things that are more strategic, more creative, more partnership related, the things that they wish they could do, right? And so I think there's lots of different ways of looking at this. You look at, I think when the keynote was up here, he shared a lot about like healthcare and radiology and other things. I mean, there's so many tools that are just going to help augment decision making in general. So, I mean, we can give a ton of examples if you'd like, but I really want to get this concept of AI agents out, because that's one thing I want you guys to leave home with, because it's the present and the future of the workforce.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
So my name is Muir Macpherson. And before I became a consultant, I was an economist. So I'll bring that perspective to this. So I think there's lots of room for collaboration between humans and AI in the workforce, and I think we can look at some of the places that have been impacted most heavily by not the current round of AI, but the most recent one. So, and this has been commented on before, but translators. So that we've had good machine translation for, I don't know, at least a decade now. And there are as many translators as there were before, if not actually more. So Bureau of Labor Statistics thinks that demand for them is going to increase faster than the average job. Well, why is that? Well, that's because machine translation is primarily not translating the things that human translators were doing, but it's being used to translate things that wouldn't have been translated otherwise. So, you can go on Twitter, or X it's called now, right? Or lots of other web pages, right? And you can get an instant translation of that. Okay. You were never going to hire a translator to translate that for you before, but now you can get that translation. There's lots of other examples of that. If you go even further back in automation, the ATM, the automated teller machine, was interested. It was introduced in the late 70s, and people thought it was going to result in big job losses for bank tellers. But actually, the number of bank tellers increased until the early 2000s. And why did it increase? It increased because the ATM made it cheaper to open bank branches because you didn't have to have a full set of people. So what we got is more bank branches. So again, right? So you're expanding the demand for that is more than soaking up the additional capacity, right? We didn't actually see a decline in the number of bank tellers until banks started shifting people to online banking. So there was we became our own bank tellers. So there's a lot of room for that kind of collaboration, and so I think this is important to think about for how the workforce interacts with AI in whether you're managing people or thinking about your career or you're thinking about opportunities to use AI. Is the most powerful places to use AI are the places where there's, again, okay, I'll use the econ term and then explain it. High price elasticity of demand, right? So if you lower the price of this thing, is demand going to increase a lot? So if you can make translation really cheap or free, are you going to see a big increase in demand for that? Yes, you are, right? So we learned that was the case for being able to get money out of a bank. There's lots of other places where if you can use AI to lower the price of a thing, you'll see a huge increase in demand. And in those kinds of circumstances, there's really no reason to see humans lose a lot of jobs because they're essentially using that AI to make themselves a lot more efficient. The places where we might see job losses are the places where there isn't the same opportunity to have a big increase in demand. So this is why people have talked a lot about driving. Okay, so is there, if you make an AI that can drive a car, does that increase the demand for how many miles everyone is going to drive in such a way that you're still going to want human drivers for some of those things? That's less clear. It's the volume of driving in the world is more confined by physics. You can imagine people living further from work because if you can make your car a mobile office, then maybe that's okay. You wind up with more miles driven. But there are also some models where you're going to have one person who's going to supervise 5 vehicles that are being driven. So as a complement to the AI. But generally speaking, that's the kind of thing where there's probably not going to be as big of an increase in demand, and so you may see more job losses. So that's where I think there's big opportunities to work together. Oh, the last thing I'll say on this, we heard earlier that coding is going to go away at some point. That may be true. I think in the short term, we're not going to see a decrease in demand for software engineers. I think we're going to see a stable, if not growing, demand for software engineers because with AI as a co-pilot, those engineers become vastly more productive. And I think there's still a huge unmet demand in the world for more and better software. I think every software as a services company experiences a huge demand from their users for more and better features. And there's new software companies being started all the time. So I don't think we're going to see an end to demand for software anytime soon. So I think AI is maybe going to actually give us much better software than we've enjoyed before.
Thank you. Do you want to add? Yes. I also want to ask this question as you brought up examples and highlighted the advantages of augmentation. I'm thinking, is there a way to promote this in the mainstream media? Because, and I'll tell you why, one of the reasons why parents are scared, students are scared, and faculty are scared, because there is no mention of, well, don't worry, you just cited this statistical information. Mainstream media will say and stop at the elimination, and then there's no follow-up. Or if there's a follow-up, then it's going to be probably in the fine print. And same in LinkedIn, I think that there should be a lot more, I would say a lot less scaremongering and a lot more positive examples, so I can tell the students, like, just go on LinkedIn and then look at all the examples.
So that's a really interesting point, and it sort of goes back to the initial question wherein you were mentioning these students are fearful, parents are fearful, and I think there's a really interesting opportunity in all of this, and that is to, as you said, have these campaigns of be adaptable. And for example, so I'm with the company, I'm the president of a company called CognitiveCare, and it's in the healthcare space, and we have patented and published algorithms and models that essentially help to, treat pediatric conditions, maternal health issues, vision issues, etc. And for us, our co-founding team is so interdisciplinary. I'm actually a lawyer, but I have a bachelor's of science where I did computer science and mathematical modeling, but I went to law school. My other co-founders are a former PwC data science partner who also had a public policy master's from London School of Economics. I have two founders who are physicians, one of whom also went back years later and got a master's in computer science. Then we have a computational biologist who also, enjoys coding. So, my point being is, yes, we went to school many years ago, but we happen to be people who chose to be adaptable and to learn multiple things. And even if you choose to study two fields and one of them isn't computer science, you're still learning that skill of adaptability. And if you can go into the workforce with that mindset that you can learn more than one thing, you will be ready for the AI-driven economy.
Thank you very much. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. How many of you guys want to be in Jensen Huang's situation right now, right? In general, this week has been a crazy week for him because of DeepSeek and all the things. But he always says, and many now folks have said, it's not AI that's going to take your job. It's the people who know AI that are going to take your job. So I've had a lot of conversation with education folks. I was actually just on a State Department presentation. I was with folks from American University and Bahrain, I think. And part of the conversation was, what are we teaching our children at college and high school levels now, and what does that policy look like so they start to get exposed to AI? What's okay, what's not? We're just using it for the education side, right? There is a lot going to change over the next couple of years. I actually think SAS is going to go away in several years. It's going to take time, but the part of this opportunity is identifying what are those new roles, right? Because there's some that we know and then some that we don't know yet, right? So it is a very interesting moment in time, but I think the biggest thing is upskilling people on how to use the tool sets so that they can do even better and be more productive the jobs that are there today.
And I feel like that, just like you said, it's an interesting time, and I think there are more questions than answers. So I will add on one question here. And the one that I was thinking about, because I've seen examples for cross-sector collaboration to create that AI positive employment landscape and to reduce that uncertainty and fear. So I've seen tech companies teaming up with universities and creating these AI hubs, for instance. I don't know if you can name any other examples or similar or somewhat different examples for such collaboration.
So again, coming back to your original question, I just want to add one point, which is about AI literacy. Right? If I ask just this room on what is AI and the value of AI, I'm sure I'll get 100 different answers. Right? So these are techie people. Now you go to the rest of the world and ask them what is AI. So I think we've got to start with the basics, right? You talked about media, right? There are people that are going to write books and books about AI. Like half of them are worthless, but they're going to write books because this is a time where there's a lot of attention on AI. So I think that's where some ethics have to come in, right? People have to follow ethics at every level, not just corporates or media, right? People in politics, everyone have to follow a level of ethics so that we are all looking at AI with the same lens, right? Our understanding of AI, the value of AI, what it's going to help with, it's probably not going to help. We are coming to a common standard. It may not be perfectly aligned, but good enough. And from there, then taking steps to achieve common goals across the globe, across the country, across the industry will be much easier.
Thank you.
So in terms of having partnerships across industries, I think one thing that my company has done that's been very successful is, it helps that we have a lot of physicians in the co-founding team and people with science backgrounds. But when we set out to do some risk prediction modeling for pediatric myopia and retinopathy of prematurity in the eyes. And the first thing we did was, we went to one of the best known institutions. It's called the L.V. Prasad Eye Institute in India, and they've served 30 million people. It's a nonprofit organization, but they've served 30 million people over the last 2-3 decades and giving eye care, much of it free. And so they had the volumes, but these are all ophthalmologists. They're brilliant ophthalmologists. Data science isn't something that maybe, they spent a ton of time on, but we had a very dedicated partnership over the last 3 to 4 years. So you might think, why would a company in data science partner with an ophthalmology organization? But that partnership has proven to be so strong, and we've learned so much about ophthalmology, and they've learned so much about data science. So I think it's not setting out in silos, and you have to reach out on the other side and work with these subject matter experts for whom you're building your solutions. There are a lot of companies out there that are trying to be everything to everyone. They're in data science, but they're in finance, they're in healthcare, they're in this, and kudos to them if they can do it. But we believe that you really have to reach out to those partnerships across the industry lines and develop these solutions together. So there's lots of room for that, and I think that's a very exciting place to be. And I think the more you do it, it's a win-win for everybody.
I can share a couple of things. I mean, a couple of things that just in general, I think have you guys heard of Station DC? That whole initiative that's focused on bringing the government, the public and private partnerships basically together. There's a lot of organizations. I almost feel like there's almost like an urgency, like World War II urgency right now in terms of who wins the AI race. And so there's a lot of organizations, including DC Startup and Tech Week and others, that are trying to build cross-sector understanding and educational literacy on what AI is, what are the opportunities, how do you work together? Because the biggest thing I keep hearing from the public sector is that we need the innovation from the startups, and this is like a different level of conversation than in the past. Obviously, public-private partnerships have happened for a long time, but they're actively reverse pitching and looking for solutions for the future of work, the future of war, the future of all those things. So I think that's happening more often now, and I think under this administration it's going to happen even more and more. The one thing Virgin is doing is that we're pitching to the Commerce Department, say of Maryland and others, because we feel like from a business sector perspective, the CEOs and the executive teams not only need to understand AI, but understand the foundations of how this technology works, because if they're not educated and they're just relying on their CIOs or CTOs, they're not going to really understand how to innovate with this stuff or leverage it with their employees and actually position it properly, talk about ethics and responsible AI properly. So some of those fundamental things, I think you have to, and our goal is hopefully the Commerce Department will sponsor it, right, and help nominate a lot of these CEOs. So it's not just like another program. These are fundamental things that these companies need to know, because just like the internet, a lot of companies were left behind because they weren't paying attention, right? So we have to just pay attention to the previous emerging tech cycles to create create solutions to a lot of the learnings that we've had in the past.
And let me just add on to that. And about a year ago, they all started enrolling in a master's program about computer science. And they said that they never in their wildest dreams thought that they would need this skill. But they felt that, since they engage with AI tools more and more, they wanted to know what is under the hood, and so they enrolled. So that leads me to the question: so what should we do, and maybe how should we do this? Should workforce strategies prioritize retraining employees or creating new career paths, or a little bit of both? What would be your priority if you think about this?
So it depends. It's going to depend on the job, and it's going to depend on the skills overlap. So this is one of the things that we do at Aon, which is we track the skills associated with jobs, just based on job postings. We have our own AI that reads all of the English language job postings in the world, and extracts the skills and responsibilities that are required for that job against a standard taxonomy that we have, and so that allows us to track changes over time in jobs and in sectors and so on. So in terms of thinking about that retraining versus rehiring, it depends. It's going to depend on that skills overlap. So I'll give you an example. So we were talking to a bank. I talked about ATMs before. So banks now are very online, which means they have lots of call center employees. Language is something that large language models are great at. So one of the things that this bank we were talking to was thinking about was, is the future of the call center one person supervising a bunch of AI agents that are interacting with customers? In that scenario, the person who is currently a call center worker is probably not going to be the person who is supervising a bunch of AI bots. That's probably going to require a set of technical skills that they don't have. But there are lots of other scenarios where that skill set is going to be much closer, and where AI is being used more in an augmentation kind of role. And that's where it's really going to make sense to upskill people. So we were talking about radiologists before. You can easily imagine scenarios where a human radiologist is working with AI radiologists in a collaborative way. And that radiologist is going to easily be able to pick up that additional skill because it's being used to complement their existing skills. So, no one likes the "it depends" answer, but I think there are different scenarios for that. Driving. So if we have this version of the driving future where you have one commercial truck driver supervising, let's say, 5 or 10 trucks that are on the road, and that human steps in to handle situations where the AI gets confused or whatnot, which is sort of consistent with, like how the Tesla full self-driving works now. So you can imagine that sort of remotely or at scale, right? That would be a case where you're going to use a commercial truck driver to do that job, right? But you're going to then train them on this new technology. So I think there are going to be places where it overlaps and where you're going to retrain people, and places where it doesn't. I'll say this is also how it worked in previous rounds of technology. So working with a bank that was in the UK that was shutting down a number of their branches because they said we don't need this many branches anymore. Too many transactions are moving online. It was easy to move people from that branch role into central call centers where they were essentially doing the same kinds of things they were doing before, only they were doing it in a remote environment. And so I think there's going to be that push-pull, at least in this short to medium term. Some of the futurists in the audience may tell us that, AI is going to be able to do everything better than every human in the next 5 or 10 years. Okay, I can't tell you about what's going to happen in that scenario, but given the kinds of technology that we have now and some incremental improvements in that technology, I think there's going to be that push-pull.
All right, thank you.
So, the area where software engineering has completely lagged over the last 30, 40 years, just compare it to structural engineering. Right? When you have to construct a building, you have requirements, you have to build a blueprint. From there, you need certain approvals. Software engineering has not followed those rules at all. Right? There are people that follow it, but they are not forced to follow. Right? Which means that every company, every country can do whatever they want. I think this is an opportunity to bring that level of discipline and best practices into AI engineering. If other engineering fields need that, why not AI engineering? Why not software engineering? right? So I think that will build a level of consistency and best practices around the board. From there, right, once you know your requirements, you know the blueprint of your company based on the requirements, then you know what skill set you need to fulfill the requirements. Then you can look at training, right, whether it's training to augment the skills of existing people or complementing that by bringing new people. You need some fundamental methodology to get there. You just cannot say, because company A is doing it, I have to do it. That's what companies are doing now. I go to conferences, I'm an advisor for BCG and Gartner. I go to companies and ask, why do you need AI? So my competition is doing AI. That's not an answer, right? You need to have a structured way of understanding why you need AI and where AI can help.
Just that, and then I have another piece. So when we go into companies, we focus on the highest impact, highest ROI, lowest effort that AI would enable to solve real business problems. Because to your point, everyone's like, oh, just slap AI on it. Or from a marketing perspective, we have to because other people are doing it. And for us, because we know, like whatever it is, I've heard 65 to 75% of AI projects fail. For us, it's start, focus on the functional area, then the product area, then the innovation area. Go in, test and prototype. And then, part of where you get buy-in from leadership is when you show them, not tell them, right? And that's what we're seeing on the generative AI side. There was another thing before. What was the actual question before we jumped into that piece?
Should we retrain or create new career paths?
The other thing that we've started to do, and we've talked to a lot of CEOs in the mid-size, so I'm only going to be very specific and narrow to our audience, so it's the mid-size company CEO, and they're at a place of like, okay, AI is big, now what, right? And so they don't have the subject matter expertise a lot of times in-house, or they've tried some beta testing and stuff, and it worked and it didn't work, but they're confused about their employees, and part of what we're starting to see is one of the conversations is like, how do we turn our culture into an innovation culture, right? So part of that is creating AI literacy at the baseline and foundation so everyone is at a certain place, and then allowing them to start to identify in their functional areas where is these highly repetitive, highly laborious tasks that you do that potentially could turn into an AI agent or AI-enabled software. The one thing that we've seen that doesn't work is when CEOs are like, all right, now we have AI or we're building it, we can reduce our FTEs by 30% and making these decisions without really seeing it come through. I think it's both. I think there's upskilling needed. I think there's new career paths are going to be there. It's going to be coming for sure. But I think it goes back to your point of like, we have to figure out what that looks like. You need the data to figure out where those career paths are headed.
Can I just add one more point too? So I just want to make sure we don't lose sight of the fact that when we talk about upskilling, we're not talking about only technical upskilling, hardcore coding skills. I actually believe that for many of the use cases that we're talking about here, the soft skills are going to be really, really important. And I'll give you an example. So like in maternal health, a lot of people are building tools. There's some Gen AI going on. There's trying to improve engagement with birthing people who leave the hospital after delivering. And what you find is you can train the data. You may have had a really great data set that had minimal bias in it. You may have tested it retrospectively. You may have tested it proactively, and because of things like Hawthorne effect, whenever you use digital solutions, you have better outcomes. But when you actually put it in practice, you'll find that people won't use it. Like you'll have people engage with it for 2 to 3 weeks and then they drop off. And because the design thinking wasn't there, that you might be asking these questions. Like for example, you as part of your solution, let's say you have an engagement solution, you're asking somebody, do you have food security? The person may not answer truthfully. And then your algorithm gets screwed because you're not getting the truthful information. But the design process didn't go as far as to think, how can I be more engaging with the people that I'm serving? How can I develop trust with those people? So I feel like the skills that are required to truly make AI tools successful require a lot of upskilling in the soft side as well, in terms of that human-to-human interaction. And so I'm a big believer that, I know we call this panel like the AI-driven economy. I even said AI-driven economy, but it's not necessarily that the economy is going to be AI-driven. It's the human imagination that's going to create these amazing solutions, and AI is going to help facilitate that, but we can't lose sight on the human trust that is so key to all of this, and there's a lot of upskilling in that area.
Thank you. So we only have time for one final sort of lightning round question, and you already, I think, mentioned a couple of key characteristics, but if you could come up with maybe 2-3 key characteristics that will define the next generation of leaders and change makers. So what key characteristics, and I think you mentioned adaptability and
Being
just wanting
disciplinary.
to be more human and find your place. If you can think of maybe a couple of characteristics that you think also.
I mean, I think one of them that is going to stay the same as the CEO is the visionary and innovator as part of this, and a part of that is that literacy has to happen. The thing that I think is such an opportunity for the next phase of leadership is understanding this technology deeper to what is possible today. And so when you start to understand, like, so much of the impossible that we thought years ago is possible today, right? Things that took us months are taking us 5 minutes, right? And that's just the beginning of the cycle. So I think the opportunity from leadership perspective is more and more they actually understand what this technology can do. So there's some actual literacy and more foundational things than just this high level thing. And then that innovation mindset starts to churn in a different way, and that will protrude throughout the entire company, both from an employee side, product side, and innovation side.
Thank you.
I agree with her. I think also these leaders have a moral and ethical responsibility to the world. I think AI is an area where sky is the limit, right? You can break all ethics in this process. So I think that is what I hope and pray, that all these innovators and these leaders, like some of them that we've seen recently on media all the time, they stay morally, I would say, loyal to the world, because they can do a lot with our data. I hope that they continue to do that. And also there are a set of regulations that would force them to do it. And it's not just regulation, the US, global regulations, because again, data is global, not just US. So I think for me, the moral ethical stand is important, innovation is important, but innovation can take us to a level where it can be extremely dangerous.
Innovation has implications, so agreed.
So I'll say, I think the important characteristic is going to be the ability to rethink existing practices, institutions, ways of organizing with the new technology in mind. This new round of AI is what economists call general purpose technology. And so if you look at past rounds of general purpose technology, there's been a delay before we really saw the full benefits, because we had to reorganize how we do things in order to really capture that. And so, for example, it used to be, when electricity came out, this was a really new idea. Factories had been driven by steam power, and in order to move power around the factory, you had to have a bunch of drives, shafts, and gears and whatever. And so the whole factory was organized around that power distribution network. And when they were electrifying factories, initially what they did is they just replaced the steam power with the electric power, and they didn't get much benefit out of that. It wasn't until they realized, instead of being organized around the power source, now we can organize around the flow of production to the factory. And because we can put machines wherever we want them to be, that was a big step forward. The automobile was another example where transporting humans, goods, everything else, we had very dense cities because that was organized around rail networks. And then the automobile meant, we can redesign cities, right? Obviously, that takes time. I think with AI, similarly, we're at the stage right now where we're looking at how things are organized around the old logic before AI, and we're plugging AI into that. And the really transformative opportunities are going to come from saying, now that we have AI, how do we rethink whatever the thing is from the ground up with this new assumptions in mind, and what does that look like? And it could be as dramatic as we're going to reorganize cities, we're going to change how things are laid out, where it's, things could be very, very different.
So for me, I have a concept of the future of modern day business, and specifically, I'm just kind of relating back to what you were saying around because I have the emerging technology exposure with DC Startup and Tech Week, I'm on screening committees for Techstars and accelerators. 8 out of 10 of those startup businesses are AI first businesses. Not always strategic, not always thoughtful, but they're thinking about their business as an AI first business. That means automation, that means innovation, using AI skills in ways that are changing up, focus groups are changing up the way that we do performance management, all the things, right? That's how it is. So, when the internet happened, right, we saw new technology, new companies form, the Googles, the Amazons, the Netflix. They leveraged internet technology and the technology there to open up and redefine what's possible. But then companies like Kodak and Yellow Pages and call it Toys R Us, all these companies that were not paying attention. So for me, the future of work is every business needs to be at some foundational intelligence. That's just going to be a baseline. The second piece of it is going to be data is currency. I know we had a different discussion, a little bit more of that, and it's more of how do you use your proprietary data to create informed decision making for precision, for personalization for your customers. Marketing is going to go from one to many to one. Things are going to become much more personal over time, right? The third piece of this is human in the loop. I think it's important until it's not. Now, we never talked about where AI is today versus the future of artificial superintelligence. That's a whole different world, and we're not going to go there right now. But having humans in the loop as part of the, using the augmentation, everything that we were talking about. And the last part of it is brand equity is going to matter more and more, right? Because there's a major narrative in the market that brand is no longer going to matter because AI is smarter than humans, and so AI is just going to take over the world. But if you think about this baseline of the future of business, so we're talking every business will have an intelligent framework of some sort starting out. Data will become your proprietary currency, right? It's going to be a major differentiator and a competitive edge. Your human being in the loop is part of the process until it's not, but for a long time it will be. And then the third, the ones who have the strongest brands and the outcome-driven brands are the ones that are going to win. So that's, in my opinion, I just want to share that because it helps CEOs and their teams just redefine how business in general is going to run. And that takes planning. That's long-term planning, right? And I think that's where we're going to see things change in the next 5 years.
Sure. I guess for my conclusionary remarks, I would simply say that I believe those CEOs and leaders who will be successful are those that start with, why am I solving this problem for whom? If you're starting with the dollar signs, or if you're starting because it's cool, or you're starting because it's a trend, I don't think you're going to go very far, frankly speaking. And the reason why that is so important is because, getting to the envisioning what the final state is, having your product in someone's hands, having them use it, or having a business use it, or having a hospital use it, or what have you. Is it trustworthy? Is it, will someone use this because they think it's going to help them? Am I improving an outcome? Am I helping someone's life get better? Am I helping a business get better? So if you're actually starting with the why, I think those are the leaders who are going to be far more successful. And because most of the models, at least in my field now, are multimodal, again, I just stress so highly that try to be as interdisciplinary as you can with your teams, build teams across various disciplines, be adaptable, and always remember the why.
Thank you so much, panel. I have so much to take back home to American University. So thank you once again. Please give them a round of applause.